Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we're joined by former Navy SEAL and, of course, New York Times best-selling author. He's currently on tour for his new book, In the Blood. And no big deal, has an Amazon Prime series based on his book, The Terminal List, coming out on July 1st. Jack Carr. Jack, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I want to talk, obviously, a lot about all your projects, the book, that new book you have coming out, the old books, the series, but tell everybody a little bit about you, how you grew up, how you ended up in the military, how you started writing these books.
Yeah, so it's all kind of connected, but I was drawn to service from a very young age. I think it was just innate and just something that was in me. And but I also grew up with my grandfather's medals from World War II. He was killed off in Okinawa in 1945. So
wow.
I never knew him. My dad never knew him, but we both grew up with black and white photos of him and his squadron. He flew the Corsair, which is the plane that had the gull wings that would fold up like that. It had the silk maps that they used to give aviators back then, because if you have a paper map and you hit the water, it would obviously not work anymore, disintegrate, but a silk map would just get wet. You could still use it. So I had
interesting.
I had all that stuff, and and also there's a show on TV called Black Sheep Squadron with Robert Conrad playing Pappy Boynton, and so that was like the power of popular culture and my connection to that generation, my dad's connection to that generation. Of course, we had World War II movies and history books and those things, but it was sitting down with my dad, watching that show and watching this Hollywood rendition, of Pappy Boynton in the Pacific, which is where his father flew and my grandfather flew. So that was a touch point with that generation, and I just knew that I was going to follow in his footsteps into the military. And then at the ripe old age of 7, I found out about SEALs. So my librarian and I went down to the library. We always grew up surrounded with books, love of reading, and we went down to the library and researched about what SEALs were. And I remember finding out that, hey, these are some of the best special operators in the world, and the training is some of the toughest ever devised by a modern military. So essentially at age 7, they had me, and I was on that track to become a SEAL from that time on. But also, growing up in the 80s, you could actually read everything on special operations. It was mostly focused on Vietnam at the time, but there wasn't that much out there. So as soon as I was 10, I started reading the same books my parents were reading, and started reading Tom Clancy and Nelson DeMille and A.J. Quinnell and J.C. Pollock and Mark Olden, David Morrell, all these guys who had protagonists with backgrounds I wanted in real life one day. So they were Navy SEALs from Vietnam, they were Army Special Forces in Vietnam, they were CIA paramilitary in Vietnam, they were Marine snipers in Vietnam, something along those lines. And I loved reading those books. So I knew that after my time in the military, I'd write thrillers. And I realized that I was giving myself an early education in the art of storytelling by reading those masters back then. So it really gave me a foundation upon which to build.
I mean, you just had it all planned out, Jack, basically. You're light years ahead of me. I remember being like my first year in college, hysterical, because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to major in. And I was like, if I don't make this decision now, like, that's it. It's all over. You had it like all planned out. I want to talk for a moment, if we could, about SEAL training and about your experience there, because we've interviewed a couple of SEALs before on this show. I'm always super impressed, super humbled to be in the company of someone who has basically gone through the most intensive military training known to man, right? Like this, it's the SEALs are the top echelon of everything. In my mind, I was going to be like a G.I. Jane type situation. I don't need the extra step, Jack. I don't need the help getting over anything. You give me the same treatment as the men and I'm going to get through it. Obviously, that has not panned out, but never too late, I guess. Tell me about what Hollywood portrays in terms of SEAL training. Was that your experience? I mean, was it better, worse? How did you find it?
Well, I mean, Hollywood's always going to have a little dash of that Hollywood magic in there. But I mean, SEAL training I was as prepared as you could possibly be for it, I think, especially going through in 1997 when I did. Now you can be more prepared. You can almost be too prepared now.
How do you prepare for SEAL training?
Well, it was a lifetime of running, of backpacking, of doing climbing ropes, of just testing myself really in the outdoors or through whatever sports I did, whether I was playing lacrosse or playing soccer or running cross country. In my head, I always had, how is this going to help me be a better operator? How's this going to help me get through floods? How's this going to help me be a better leader? And especially doing those kinds of sports where it's just you. So if you're out running, or if you're just doing a workout by yourself and
it's all in here.
That's it. And no one knows if you're going to stop. If you're running a hill or doing sprints and there's no one else around, no one knows you're going to quit except for you. No one knows you're going to walk except for you. So knowing that, thinking about that, and keep pushing yourself anyway, that I really thought back to those times when I was in buds and it's the middle of the night during Hell Week and I have a log over my head and people are quitting in droves. I thought back to, hey, not quitting when I was all by myself and I could have stopped running, but I didn't. And also thought back to previous generations and everything they had sacrificed.
Right.
So be there following my dream on that beach. And I wasn't going out the back of a landing craft onto a beach at Normandy on D-Day, running across the beach with no cover and concealment, getting hosed down with a machine gun in an elevated position. Wasn't going to the beaches at Iwo Jima. So I was like, you know what? I can do a little more. I can do a couple more push-ups on this beach in Coronado, California. I can get yelled at a little more by these instructors. So that really put things in relative terms.
Man, I think about that often, actually. I think at moments like you're saying, when I'm like, oh, this is kind of getting uncomfortable now. I don't know that I really want to keep going, whatever it is. I do a lot of crazy stuff these days. But I think about that sometimes, about the fact that people throughout history, especially you look at Americans and what we've been through in our short history as a country, man, people have been through a lot tougher stuff than what we are dealing with right now in America. Our day-to-day lives are so easy relative to what people have had to fight to give us, this incredible country we live in. I think about that all the time. I love that you're there. And I feel like based on how you train, perhaps I was on the right track. Perhaps I still am. Again, never say never. What was the hardest part though for you? To me, is it true? Aren't you like bound somehow and trying to like swim, or how does that go?
It's called drown proofing, and they tie your hands
Casual.
and throw you in the pool, and
oh my God,
these certain techniques to kind of stay afloat type of a thing. They have underwater knot tying. They have life saving, which is where they have different instructors in the pool and you have to go save them. And I like that part because at the time I'd been doing jiu-jitsu, and not too many people, it was like before the UFC got big and people didn't really understand jiu-jitsu yet. So when I went out to get those big instructors that then just take you to the bottom and slam you off the bottom, it was just like, that was my time to relax. And that was the time, that was like one of the only times you could go hands-on with the instructors, because usually you're just getting yelled at and being told listen, you're never going to make it, and do 100 more push-ups and that sort of a thing. But this time you could actually put hands on. So I was like, all right, this is like one of my favorite parts. And I just relax and let them expend their energy. And then they have to come up for air at some point. And then you just take a little breath and get closer to the side of the pool. And then they take you down again and expend all that energy. And you just relax while they do that, just like if you have somebody in a choke in jiu-jitsu type of a thing. So anyway, I love that part of it.
Very mental. It's all mental is what I'm gathering. Or I mean, obviously it's physical, but a lot of it has to do with what you're getting out of, up top here as it's all happening. You've got to be in the right mind frame to deal with this sort of thing.
I think any average high school athlete can make it through physically. Like you're going to get in shape pretty quick. You're going to learn how to run in the sand pretty quick. You're going to learn the techniques on the outside pretty quick. You're going to get this technique for swimming down this combat recovery stroke we do pretty quick. So if you're an average high school athlete, you'll get to that next level once you're there. I mean, obviously it's better to show up in as good a shape as you can possibly be, but it's really about finding that kind of intangible grit that you can't really test for with a bubble test or give somebody. You have to go through this thing called Hell Week. You have to pass this crucible, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that grit, and it's hard to find any other way.
We need more of that, I feel, just as a rule in the world, in America for sure right now. We need a few more people with grit and with determination and not willing to quit so easily. I feel like, I don't know. Do you feel like it's slipping away? I'm kind of worried for generations coming up, or maybe we're at a point where the cycle is starting again and like our kids will be raised the right way and, they're not going to need like a safe space and a puppy.
I try to remain hopeful, especially publicly. But, I sit down with my wife at the end of the night on the couch and have a glass of wine. We are definitely concerned for the future of the country. And, we have been given so many freedoms, so many options and opportunities by people who have sacrificed so much from the inception of this country up until today. And we're the champions of that freedom. And we need to turn that over to the next generation as well. And all these decisions that we're making today, they don't just affect us. We're making these decisions for future generations. And what we owe them is to put the requisite time, energy, and effort into studying the issues so we can make the best decisions possible for them, not for us, but for them and the future of the country. And we now have segments of society, half of our politicians essentially, that want to take those freedoms away, want to erode those freedoms that were given to them essentially by generations that sacrificed everything and risked everything so that we could be free today. So it's a tough situation to be in, and I'm trying to remain hopeful. And so what I try to encourage people to read, stop tweeting, start reading, get in the pages of these, get into the pages of history books, get into historical fiction, because oftentimes it's a little more approachable than some of the other history books, but get that appreciation. So you'll take a pause, and instead of just retweeting something from someone else who also didn't put in the requisite time, energy, and effort into studying the issue, you can take a breath, study it, and then make a good decision for these future generations. That's what we owe them.
God, we do need more reading. You know, you get on planes nowadays, and I fly probably more often than I'd like, but I notice everybody's on a phone or like an iPad or something. There may be like 3 people on the whole plane with an actual book. And when I read, I don't like to read on a tablet or on my phone. I feel like it gives me a headache. I don't like that. I like an actual book to hold and read. Does it feel like that's slipping away from us though? Are people reading less now, do you feel?
Well, we thought in publishing, they thought that the ebook was going to destroy, the hardcover.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. So,
right.
But I think for this generation that's coming up, like my kids, I have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, and 11-year-old, and for them, I think audiobooks might be the gateway because there's so many different distractions. I think audiobooks might be that gateway for them, just because there's so many other options out there, more than like what we had growing up. What I had growing up anyway, I had books. I could run around outside. I could play Atari 2600, but you're not playing that for too long. It's just not going to keep you glued to the TV for that long. And so we went into the pages of these books, and I think the audiobook might be the gateway that'll get people reading, but I'm just like you. I don't want to be on an electronic device because I'm on electronic devices for work all the time and doing emails and all the rest of it. So when it comes time to take a breath and read, I don't want to have it be on the same device that I've been working on. I want to make that shift in my head, have no distractions, and then read a good old-fashioned book.
Yeah, well, so we're getting into weeds on stuff. I feel like we could really just kind of get lost in things here. Loving this conversation, but you were a Navy SEAL for how long?
For 20 years.
Wow. I mean, you must have seen some stuff.
It was a good time to be in. So I started enlisted. I was an enlisted SEAL sniper and then became an officer. Most of that time, I came in 96, came into BUD/S in 97. September 11th happened 2 weeks into my second deployment. And then it was kind of back and forth between Iraq, Afghanistan, a couple other places around the world ever since. So it was a good time to be in. But then as the 20-year mark approached, I made that 04 rank, which is like a major in the other services. It's a lieutenant commander in the Navy. And I realized that my last deployment as a troop commander would be the last time where I would tactically maneuver guys on the battlefield. After that, I would come back eventually after a few staff jobs to be a commanding officer, which sounds very impressive, but really you're back in the tactical operations center these days at that rank, and you're not out there kicking doors with the guys and doing the job that you came in to do. So my family needed me. It had been a long 20 years, and it was very evident that it was time to get out, take care of the family. So it was time to listen to that next calling, which was writing. So started writing that first novel, and the Terminal List was the result. And now we have it coming to Amazon Prime in July.
Oh, so when you first started writing, I mean, you'd obviously thought about it before, you were interested in it, you knew that it was something that I guess you liked to do. Had you written much before that point?
No, I'd been a fan. I approached it from the fans' perspective.
Wow.
I read all these books growing up and then continuing to read them all my life. I was introduced to Joseph Campbell in 1988 through a series of interviews he did on PBS called The Power of Myth. He wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, and I was enthralled with that because it influenced George Lucas for Star Wars. And so I think I looked at every show, book, movie after that through the lens of the hero's journey. So all of that kind of came together along with my academic study of warfare, terrorism, insurgencies, and counterinsurgencies, and then my personal experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. So if I'm writing a chapter where my main character gets ambushed in Los Angeles, California, I can go back and think about what it was like to be ambushed in Baghdad, Iraq in 2006, and then take those feelings and emotions and apply them to a completely fictional narrative. So I don't have to go out and find somebody and interview them about what it was like to be ambushed and then have that filter through whatever biases and preconceived notions, other books I've read, movies I've seen. It just comes right from my heart and soul, right into the pages. And I think that really made it stand out to Simon & Schuster, who sees thousands of these kinds of books every year, and also made it stand out to readers, and luckily to Chris Pratt as well.
I know. Well, I want to talk about that in a second. You just finished your 5th book, but when you did the first one, I mean, first of all, was it easier to write than you expected? Was it as expected? And did you expect anything when you released it, did you think that it would do well, or did you, I mean, was there ever a notion you were going to be a New York Times best-selling author?
Yes, and I think that's because from growing up, I was always like, oh, reading all these guys, and it says #1 New York Times bestselling author. So
You're like, it's just what you do.
oh, exactly. So when you're 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, that's just what you think. Oh, I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to write these thrillers, and I'll be a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and then an A-list actor will portray my character in Hollywood, and I just never. So that's all the bandwidth that got. So I got to, and even all these years later, when I started writing during my last year in the military, I continued to think that. I didn't know I needed an agent. I didn't have a website. I'm not coming from sports or politics. I have no social media presence whatsoever. I know nothing about how to even create a social media account. So all my time, energy, effort went right into the book because I knew it had to be the best product it could possibly be. And only after it got to Simon & Schuster and then we crept up on publication date did I start to think about the business side of it. And I didn't realize, I thought as an author you could just go to the mountains and write in a cabin and send it to New York, and then maybe you do a morning show or something like that, and then you write your next book. I didn't realize that you have to do everything you would do for any other business, from marketing and budgets and advertising and social media engagement, building out campaigns, like anything you would have to do to support any product that you have. But at that base level, the product has to be the best it can be, but then people have to know that it's out there. So these days I can engage, like 30 years ago, an author could only really engage at a book signing and shake a hand and say thank you, or maybe a book fair and maybe 1 or 2 interviews. But today I can engage on social media, and I can try to provide something of value to people throughout the year rather than just when my book is coming out. So as I try to engage on social media, I try to put up things that are going to add value to people's lives, whether it's through my podcast, blog, social media presence, whatever it might be, because they have limited amount of time and they're trusting me with that time now. And however long it's going to take them to get through a book, or the 13 hours it's going to take them to listen to the audiobook, or just following me on social media and looking at a post for a minute or 30 seconds or 5 seconds, that's still time they're never going to get back. So I take that very seriously that they're trusting me with that. And that's why everything I have goes into every project that I do.
I feel like I need to start taking my social media posts more seriously. I'm just casually posting videos of my dog getting a hot dog for his birthday.
People love those.
I hope so. I mean, time will tell. But look, you're talking about this audiobook situation. I've always wondered this. Do you actually do the voice on the audiobook?
No, I wanted the professional, somebody who is an actual professional to do that. And so that's Ray Porter. And what I didn't realize, because I'm not an audiobook person, as we talked about, I'm a hardcover person. So I didn't realize that narrators have their own following that follow them from project to project.
No.
And I happened to choose somebody. I had no idea. I chose somebody either. Top of the pyramid as far as narrators go, Ray Porter. So I chose him. And Simon & Schuster gets back to me and says, well, I guess we can ask him. And I was like, yeah. And he said yes. And now we're dear friends. And it was up for Audiobook of the Year. The first one up there was Stephen King and Ruth Ware. So that was crazy. And we've got to be great friends over the years. And people absolutely love Ray Porter. And I am so thankful that he said yes. And I mean, I had no idea that he was so popular and at the top of his profession.
I mean, neither do I. I'm learning a lot here. See, my question was going to be, you said it's 13 hours to listen to your entire book, right, on the audiobook version. But I'm very interested in, like, how does that all work out when somebody goes in? Do they just read? Do they have to reread things in a variety of ways to give certain emphasis in certain areas? Because let me tell you something, working in television, like I did for a long time, I know just to track a 3-minute piece could take forever. I mean, it could take multiple takes to get that right. And a 13-hour long audiobook, I mean, I'm curious to know more about that, but I don't know if Ray's let you in on any secrets, although he's a professional, so he probably just.
Yeah, no, he has. He's been on my podcast twice, and we're dear friends now. And I asked him that exact question, and every narrator does it a little differently, but he likes to do a little skim just kind of to get the feeling for it. And
yeah.
To read it like for the first time. So he's reading it just like you would as a reader for the first time. He's experiencing it in that same way.
Oh,
so I'm sure he has to go back a couple of times, especially if I have some dialogue going and I wait till the second page to say that someone has a distinct Russian accent. Then he has to go back probably and do that again. So I try to help him out by getting some of that information up near the front. But he likes to experience it for the first time, just like his listeners are going to experience it.
Interesting. I could see how that works. Okay, again, we're getting sidetracked, but I just can't help myself. I'm very curious about a lot of these things. So The Terminal List, which is your first book, You wrote immediately after coming out of being a SEAL for 20 years, is being turned into a TV series starring none other than Chris Pratt. It's set to air on or around July 1st, I believe, on Amazon Prime. Tell me about this experience, because, I mean, is that sort of like the greatest testament to having an awesome book that people want to turn it into a TV series or a movie or something?
Well, I feel quite fortunate. And so this one is a little crazy too, in that right before the book came out, about 5 months before it came out, I got a call from an old SEAL buddy of mine I hadn't talked to in 5 years. And he calls me and says, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I said, "Yes, of course I do." And he said, "Well, do you remember what you did for me in the SEAL teams?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you're the only person that sat me down in your office, talked to me about transitioning out. You introduced me to people in the private sector. I've never forgotten it, and I always wanted to thank you." And I said, "No problem. How's it going?" And he said, "Well, I heard you have a book coming out." And I said, "Yeah, it's coming out in like 4 or 5 months. I have a galley copy that I can send you, which is like a rough draft." And he said, "I'd like that, but I'd like to give it to a friend of mine." And I said, "Yeah, who's that?" And he said, "Chris Pratt." So that was convenient. Yeah, and even more convenient in that I thought of Chris Pratt playing the role as I was writing it.
No, really?
He'd only been in Parks and Rec, and he had a very small role in Zero Dark 30 playing a SEAL.
Yeah.
I got to see his transformation from kind of his lovable, kind of overweight Andy Dwyer character in Parks and Rec to this special operator in Zero Dark 30 about the Bin Laden raid. And I thought, this is a guy who's done a lot of comedy and someone who needs to take a risk. And I thought of Tom Hanks in the 80s doing all the comedy and then taking a risk with Philadelphia and then being able to really do whatever he wanted. And I thought, Chris Pratt's the guy. And he seemed inherently likable on and off screen, which was important to me. And to have it then end up in his hands and then have him want to do it, it's pretty surreal. And then also at the same time, another SEAL buddy gave it to Antoine Fuqua. And I had thought of Antoine Fuqua being the director. He did Shooter and Training Day and Tears of the Sun and Magnificent Seven. And now we're all 3 executive producers on it. Chris is starring and Antoine's directing. So it's crazy.
I mean, I feel like first of all, the SEALs are very connected, apparently. You guys are everywhere. You know everybody. You got a lot going on. That's really incredible. How has that process been, though? Because I imagine most of it has already been shot. It's being edited and put together right now. I mean, because we're like a little over a month out, right? Yep. How involved were you in what happened for the actual series?
Yeah, so usually they like to get rid of the author right away so that you're not on. You ruined my vision.
Get him out.
Exactly. So they're like, out with that guy. But Chris and Antoine wanted me involved from the very start. So they connected me with a showrunner who, for those listening, is like, for a series, is kind of like the director if it's just a movie. So he's doing kind of everything, juggling multiple directors, juggling everything. They connected me with him in December of 2019. And we had our first conversation then, and we've talked every day since, to include today. And we started working on the pilot episode. And by working on it, I mean, he's writing, I'm learning, he's mentoring me along, I'm advising on a few things here and there. And then he took that script with Antoine and Chris, and they took it to Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Showtime and HBO and Apple, and it got in a bidding war, and Amazon ended up with it. And then they put the writer's room together, and I advised on all those scripts. And then we started filming in March of 2021. So we finished between March and August, finished in August, then it went into post-production, and I've been involved in every step of it, which is great, but it's not so great if no one likes it, because I can't say Hollywood ruined it. So now I'm invested. And I got to take ownership of it. But to me, Chris, Antoine, and the showrunner, it was always important to keep any changes, and we're going to be changes because it's told in a visual medium now, rooted in the foundation of the novel, which is dark and it's gritty and it's violent and it's primal. And any changes had to be rooted in that foundation. And I know we succeeded there. So I could not be more thrilled with how it looks. And everybody was so nice. Antoine is amazing. Chris is incredible. Everybody on set was so normal. And because we see people at like the Golden Globes and at Oscars get up there, and it's either a producer, a director, an actor, and they get up there and they say something a little disconnected maybe from most Americans. But on set, there's 350 other people that aren't that star or that director, and that's on all sets. And all of them made a point to come up to me and tell me how much they enjoyed the book and how much they loved being on this set, how it felt different than other sets they'd been on in Hollywood, and tell me, hey, my daughter's going to boot camp tomorrow. Will you sign a book? Or my son's going on his first deployment as a Marine tomorrow. Can you sign a book? And we'd talk about Land Cruisers and guns and knives and motorcycles and like normal American stuff. And they're just great Americans doing a job and wanting to put food on the table. So I guess I hadn't really thought too much about it because my vision of Hollywood was the Golden Globes and Oscars. But really, there's a lot of other people that are making all those things happen.
No, always. I mean, it's great to always remember that too. They're, just the folks you see on screen, obviously we know are not the ones that actually make most of the work happen. It's the people behind the scenes, and love to hear the positive interaction there. And I gotta say, for a time kind of like we're in now, look, people are pressed on all different fronts. People are having a hard time finding the things they need, paying for the things they need right now. It feels like we're in a bit of a precarious situation as a country right now and around the world. Things seem a little bit off, and people are kind of on edge about a variety of different issues. To have a show like this, and I know you're saying it's dark and it's gritty and all these things, but it gets your mind off of the day-to-day, right? I mean, and that's why a great book is so awesome. It's because you can kind of escape from everything else that's going on, everything you're dealing with. So I think, look, I can tell you right now, my husband will be watching this show. He would have been watching this show whether or not I even talked to you and told him about it. This is right up his alley. But I think a lot of Americans are looking for something like this for this time right now. It kind of seems like kismet almost that it's all come to fruition and it's happening this summer. Do you get a sense like that too? Because it's been in the works for a long time for you.
I do, and we had to fight pretty hard on a few different things, and we won. And to Amazon's credit, they came down on our side each and every time there was something that maybe they were a little concerned about, or maybe something that somebody wanted to get in there.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, it took some work. It took if we weren't involved, if Chris wasn't totally involved and Antoine wasn't totally involved, and really just wanting to make good art, make a great show. No politics, nothing's shoved in there, nothing like.
So refreshing. Thank you.
Show. So we had to keep going back to that. Make good art. Like that is, as Neil Gaiman says, like that's it. That's what your focus needs to be. And that's what everyone between Los Angeles and New York wants to watch. So
imagine.
So I think that I mean, it did take a lot of work, but we are there, and to have Amazon come down on our side each and every time, even though they're a little nervous about it. Now they're seeing it. Now with the trailer that just dropped the other day, they're seeing the response to that, and they're breathing a sigh of relief, I think, because there's a couple shots in there that they were nervous about, and I think they're like, okay, now this was a good investment, and people are really going to like this. So I'm hoping it gets us back to just making good art for the country that they can just sit down and enjoy without having to worry about certain things or whatever else. Either side, doesn't matter, and just watch something and enjoy it as Americans.
Amen to that. Let's get more of that going on. All right, so Jack, you're a former Navy SEAL, best-selling author. You've got a series coming out. You host your own podcast, Danger Close with Jack Carr. If you have any free time, which I'm trying to imagine how you would, what do you do to kind of escape from all this? What do you do to relax? What's happening on your free time?
Yeah, so there's very little free time. I don't think there's any, but if there is, usually I jump on the motorcycle because I don't have, nothing's buzzing at me. I don't have my phone. I don't put my phone in a little navigation thing there, so I don't see anything popping up. I don't have it in my pocket buzzing. I put it on airplane mode. And yeah, so that's nice. But with the family, we have 3 kids, dog, and we're just like juggling chaos all the time. So but with a family, we try to get to a place where there's no Wi-Fi, no cell service. So we typically try to take at least one river trip every year. We go to the bottom of River Canyon and spend a few days on the river, and no Wi-Fi, no cell service. So even for me, not just the kids, there's no threat of me being like, oh, hey, hold on one second. I just need to get back to this person real fast. Like that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. So I like to get in the outdoors with the every chance I get, whether we're skiing together, hiking together, going to the bottom of River Canyon for a week or so. Those are the ways that I escape these days. But other than that, it's a full-on sprint on all fronts.
I hear you. I can appreciate all that. Do you think, are there any of your kids that you feel like are interested in following your footsteps in the Navy SEALs?
Well, our daughter is talking about going into, I think this drives my wife crazy, but she's talking about the military, and she's talking about explosive ordnance disposal of all things.
Why wouldn't she? I love it.
Geez. So we shall see. I don't really push them either way into anything. Just try to encourage them
Of
to
course,
fulfill
yeah.
their dreams, like my parents did to me. Encourage them to read, of course, to study, to take a breath, to get off their devices, that sort of a thing. So we'll see. We shall see. I just want them to
Yeah,
have the same options and opportunities that I did.
I love it. That's great. I just want to take a moment and give a shout out to your wife, because anyone I know who has spent any time in the military, I have military in my family, the spouse always has so much on their shoulders here at home. Do you think that you would have been as successful as you have been without the help of your wife? Do you, with the family, everything else?
Oh no, I would be a disaster. I have no idea as to finances, where like she handles all that side of it, so I can focus on writing any chance that I get. And now for us going down range, that's like the easy part, because you're with your best friends, you're with your teammates, you've trained up for a mission, you're solely focused on that task at hand. You're building target packages, putting together target of patterns of life on targeted individuals, and that's your focus. You're not worried about, hey, is the person going to come and fix the gutters this week, or so and so is a leaky faucet, or the kid's crying, I need to change a diaper. None of that. You're dealing with zero. You're not paying bills. You're not doing any of that. They're at home dealing with all that. And then, especially in today's day and age, or over the last 20 years, they had that added burden of having TV and 24 News and seeing, okay, 6 U.S. service members killed in Iraq. Okay, my husband's in Iraq. Then it goes 6 service members killed outside of Baghdad. Oh, my husband's outside of Baghdad. Special operators. Oh, my husband's a special operator. Then Marines, then Army, then Navy. So it kind of whittles down, and so that's worry is constantly there. They see it in the ticker at the bottom of the screen all those years. So they have that added burden as well. And then the commands, if something does happen, are in a race against time to get to them to be there and let them know what's happened before they get that on the 24-hour news cycle. So
I never thought of that. It's such a heavy burden to carry. I never even considered that, but it's true. Back in, we were talking about World War II at the beginning of the show, it could take weeks before someone found out that something happened to their loved one. I mean, it's immediate today, within, an hour or so of something happening that there was a situation. That's crazy. I never thought of that. But yes, shout out to all the military spouses out there. It's an underappreciated, I feel, role that if anybody in that position, they're pretty amazing. That's quite a job and quite a task. So I'm sure you have massive respect for your wife. What do you think, Jack, is the best part of America, and what do you think is the biggest threat to the future of our country?
Well, they're kind of tied together in that growing up, I always remember how the First Amendment used to bind us all together, regardless of what we thought of the Second Amendment or you thought of anything else. Like that First Amendment was something that brought us all together. And we would always say things like, I'll stand up for your right to speak, especially if you disagree with me and I disagree with you. I'll go fight for your right to say those things. And that was what bound us together. And now with all the division, everything gets weaponized. I mean, you hear the words lawfare, you hear all these different things. Even that First Amendment, that one thing that used to bind us all together as Americans, has even been weaponized against us. And those people that used to be the stalwart guardians of that First Amendment, from lawyers to publishing houses to reporters to newspaper editors, all of those people are now, not all of them, they all used to be kind of the guardians. And now you have elements of those professions actively calling for censorship, not standing up for someone who disagrees with them. And I think that is probably, so that's was our strength for so long, debating things in the marketplace of ideas and having the best ideas filter to the top. And now we don't have that. Now we're okay, we don't agree with each other, okay, cancel you. And so that, I think, is not to the benefit of future generations, doesn't make us stronger as a country, continues to divide us. And if we can't figure that piece out, that is, it doesn't bode well for the future of the nation. That's for sure.
Yeah, so true. I kind of feel like that we've almost reached a tipping point with a lot of it, though, because I feel like so many people are kind of just so sick of the cancel culture, of all of that. And a lot of people are like, no, you know what? I'm not going to be canceled. I'm not going to be afraid to speak my mind. I mean, and look, there's some people, things happen with their jobs or friends or whatever it might be, but I don't know. I feel like we're getting to a place where people are getting a little sick of it. It's reached kind of a fever pitch of sorts. So, but I think you're right. I think if we lose that, then the foundation of our country fully crumbles, and it's a bit of a scary predicament to find ourselves in. But look, Jack, good luck with everything. You have a lot of coals in the fire, a lot going on right now. We're so happy you took some time to chat with us. Great luck on everything. The new book, which we didn't even talk about, but I'm sure people can find it anywhere you find books. Yeah.
That's right. You can go to officialjackcarr.com and check it out. But it's out. This is publication week, and it's a sniper-centric novel of violent resolutions. Is how I thought as I was writing it.
Again, I need to get this for my husband. This is all like right up his alley. And then the series coming out beginning of July with Chris Pratt. Really awesome. We're going to be watching and just keeping up with everything you do. But best of luck. And Jack Carr, thanks for joining us on The Right View. And to everybody at home, as always, thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next time for more.
Take care.